Hello there, good evening and welcome. This is Abuja Dispatch, a program specially dedicated to bringing to your living rooms those events, issues, and indeed those characters that have shaped the entire landscape of the federal capital city, Abuja, in the last 1 week. Adegboyega Arogbodo is my name. Let's start off by reviewing those stories that made up our headlines in the outgoing week.
Two young Nigerian innovators have emerged winners of this year's international ICT competition held in Dubai, United Arab Emirates. The event, which was the largest ICT platform across Africa, Europe, Asia, and the Middle East, had in attendance 750 participants drawn from 73 countries. Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Dr. Issa Ibrahim Pantami, announced this while briefing State House correspondents Federal Executive Council meeting. He said the two robotic innovators in the sphere of artificial intelligence came top with their world-class applications in the areas of security and healthcare delivery. The minister, however, allayed fears over what may become the fate of the giant innovators in years to come by reeling out critical efforts of the present government in form of executive orders to encourage local content and capacity.
A bill for an act to prevent and redress sexual harassment for students in tertiary educational institutions has scaled through second reading on the floor of the Nigerian Senate. The bill proposes up to 14 years jail term with a minimum of 5 years without an option of fine for any educator who commits sexual offenses in tertiary institutions. The bill, which was sponsored by the Deputy President of the Senate, Ovie Omo Agege, with the support of 105 other senators, seeks to legally punish educators who are found guilty of sexual offenses prescribed by the bill. Leading the debate on the general principles of the bill, Senator Omagege said the bill is enacted to promote the protection, prevention, and redressal of complaints of sexual harassment against students by educators in tertiary educational institutions. The Senate, after a fruitful deliberation, directed the Committee on Judiciary, Human Rights and Legal Matters to look into the bill and report to the Senate in 2 weeks for further legislative inputs.
We have the
The House of Representatives has mandated its Committee on Banking and Currency to investigate the details of the disbursed funds of $7 billion by the Central Bank of Nigeria to 14 banks and other continued non-payment of same 13 years after disbursement. According to the Green Chamber, the investigation will also determine the terms and conditions of the disbursement to ascertain if the terms and conditions have been complied with as it relates to repayment of the fund. It was revealed that sometime in 2006, the Central Bank of Nigeria disbursed $7 billion of Nigeria's $38.7 billion foreign reserve to 14 global asset managers and their 14 Nigerian banks' local partners to manage. The House was worried that after 13 years, Nigeria's hard-earned $7 billion foreign reserves has not been repaid to the Central Bank of Nigeria, and there is no action put in place to ensure repayments of the funds.
Chairman, Independent National Electoral Commission, Professor Mahmood Yakubu, says the role of the security agencies cannot be stressed enough, as they are the key critical stakeholders in the nation's electoral process. Mahmood gave the indication during the quarterly meeting with the Interagencies Consultative Committee on Election Security at the Commission's headquarters in Abuja. He said the meeting is targeted at reviewing the security situations and fine-tune plans towards November 16 Bayelsa and Kogi State governorship elections. The INEC boss further expressed preparedness in the conduct of forthcoming elections, adding that modalities have been put in place to ensure free, fair, and credible polls. The Inspector General of Police, Mohammed Adamu, also used the forum to warn security personnel deployed to strictly adhere to the standards, regulations, and guidelines of the electoral process. The police IG disclosed that 31,041 personnel have been deployed to Bayelsa, while 35,200 personnel to Kogi State ahead of the November 16 governorship elections.
The Honorable Federal Commissioner.
The federal government says it remains resolute in formulating and implementing policies that will revamp the nation's health sector. The Minister of Health, Osage Ehanire, made the assertion at the National Dissemination and Official Launch of the 2018 Nigerian Demographic and Health Survey Report in Abuja. Osage said the data generated by the survey will provide information needed to channel resources towards addressing key developmental areas and also efficient monitoring and evaluating projects in the health sector. He also noted that the present government places emphasis on health and well-being of its citizens, adding that no stone will be left unturned to ensuring health care is adequately provided. The acting chairman, National Population Commission, Bimbola Salu Hondeyin, stressed the significance of the survey report to policymakers in both public and private sectors in prioritizing health plans for national development. Thanks for staying with us. In the recent weeks, President Muhammadu Buhari had embarked on several foreign trips. Many of these foreign trips were based on international conferences, state visits, and special invitations. Some Nigerians believe that there are several economic benefits accruable to these visits, while many others think that they are mere jamboree. That is our focus on Dateline this week. Join us.
President Muhammadu Buhari visited the Kingdom of Morocco. He asked King Mohammed VI to give Nigeria from their rich phosphate mineral so that fertilizer can be produced here at home for the teeming farming population. 3 years down the road, 24 moribund blending plants are now working, providing 100,000 direct and indirect new jobs to Nigerians. The cost of fertilizer is down by more than 50%. In planning for his trip to Beijing for a meeting with President Xi Jinping, President Buhari rightfully chose to prioritize his request by putting Lagos-Kano Railway and Mambila Power Plant on top. Today, China is giving these projects together with the finance and many more. On the recent trip to Russia, President Muhammadu Buhari had a wish list that included railways, power projects, and military procurements. President Putin held the keys to these solutions. President Buhari asked, and he was given. It is clear these are laudable economic moves on the surface.
There are many economic issues to do with the country. The presence of the president gives it all the importance. If the president attends the meeting, there is a lot of value attached to it. Now, if you have a continental meeting, let's say in Africa, and it's meant to do with the economy, with the diplomacy, with the policy, with the politics of Africa, and Nigeria is not there, while other presidents are there, I think the meeting will be incomplete.
Meanwhile, many believe that Nigeria's economy doesn't appear to have benefited immensely from the president's many travels. The economy recorded a sluggish 1.9% growth year-on-year in the third quarter of the 2019. A figure lower than the initial World Bank project of 2.2%. According to data obtained by the United Nations Conference on Trade and Development, foreign direct investment has been fluctuating in recent times. It dropped 27% to $3.4 billion in 2015 and rose to $4.44 billion in 2016. It plunged to $3.5 billion in 2017 and dipped to $1.9 billion in 2018. The presidency believed that Mr. President's strategy of selling Nigeria's infrastructure priorities to countries with economic clout is paying off handsomely and is in reality doing Nigeria proud by tackling the gaps in infrastructure deficit.
Foreign investment is not the job of one person, it's not the job of Mr. President alone, but it gets to a point where the president of the country will need to put his face to the talk, will need to put his face to the negotiation, and he sent a signal to the would-be investor that the nation is genuinely desirous, of such foreign investment.
I don't also think that the president will need much travel to attract foreign investors. The foreign investors They know what is happening in Nigeria. They know how the economy of Nigeria. They know the security situation, and they know some of these things.
In today's interconnected world, international engagements of nations are calendared in specific times of the year. No nation will fail to take advantage of the important international gatherings to make their views known and express their concerns. But another line of argument has always been that President Buhari can actually delegate some of his foreign trips because that is exactly why he has ministers and aides. The opinion of many is that the president spends too much time abroad, and this is affecting his domestic responsibilities, positioning that active diplomacy is the cause of some kind of governance deficit. The recent visit of Nigerian leader to South Africa, for instance, has not yielded much results, as Nigerians in that country continue to fall to the heinous ends of xenophobic attacks.
A president of a country of this magnitude and of the magnitude of the kind of problems that we have in Nigeria shouldn't have the luxury of all of these multiple travels that are recorded against him. Definitely, yes, the president can delegate many of these travels, especially to the foreign affairs minister, who also has an array of ambassadors under his command that he can also delegate to attend some of all of these meetings. It is only for important state visits that have been pre-arranged over a long period of time that the president should attend to.
There are some trips also that will require, the presence of the president himself. It depends on where he's going and what he's going to do. I know one of the times the president had traveled this year was to go and attend the United Nations General Assembly meetings, and there are roles carved out for heads of nation, and as the head of the Nigerian nation, he would have had to be there to perform his own role, and address the United Nations General Assembly the way he did.
It is a loud question in some quarters that if Mr. President is indeed interested in cutting down the level of government spendings, shouldn't he lead by example by cutting down his many travels that gulp a great chunk of resources expended on his large itinerary to such trips? By mid-November, President Buhari would have embarked on 4 foreign trips in the last 3 months. It is the hope of Nigerians that these trips and 33 others embarked upon by Mr. President in his first 3 years of his first term will yield the needed tangible benefits. Posterity will be there to judge whether such diplomatic trips are indeed or worth the resources expended or not.
Welcome back. It is no more news that the federal government, the organized labor, and the state governments indeed have agreed to peg the national minimum wage at 30,000 naira. But what is still generating controversies across the polity is the level of the consequential increase to be placed on the different workers across board. That is the crux of our discussion in the next segment. Welcome to this segment of Abuja Dispatch, the Split Views. And on Split Views this week, we are featuring an investment analyst and political strategist, Mr. Niyi Akishiju. You are welcome to the program, sir.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Now that the minimum wage has been pegged at 30,000 naira, many people are of the views that that is not what really what Nigerian workers deserve. They're believing that the federal government should probably institute some intervention processes that will really, cushion the effects of economic hardship, as it were, on the people.
Yeah, I agree. You see, there is no jurisdiction that can ever provide for all the needs of its workers. Especially for those of us that come from the Marxist school of thought, it is an alienation. Salary itself is an alienation of the contribution. The sweat contribution of the workers, and it is not quantifiable. But again, the reality is that there must be transactions, and the transaction has to do with the worker providing his sweat, in exchange for something. So it cannot be enough. So it's a continuous thing, and that is why the fact of negotiation is important. The labor will come to the table. This is what we feel it is. the federal government, representing employers of labor, would also come to the table and say, this is the resources available. So how do we find a mid road, in this consideration? So a minimum wage is normally a mid road. What the labor wants for workers and what the federal government or what the government has, to provide and meet the needs of the labor. So, but I think the other, as you talk, maybe your consideration is intervention. Yes, intervention will reflect in what can federal government do to boost employment capacity. What does the federal government do to reduce price, to reduce inflation rate? Because inflation rate also impacts on the salaries, what you call your disposable income. What can 30,000 naira buy 2 years ago? What can he buy this year? Those are the, but as of course price start falling, it will also reflect on the what you call the purchasing price parity of the income.
And now we have a particular benchmark set by the federal government. That's for the consequential increases, on the workers across board. Now, many are saying that the national minimum wage just is for the benefits of grade level 0 or 1 to 7. Why from level 8 to 17 just lead to consequential increase? And as it were, do you think that the national minimum wage really affects level 8 to 17?
Well, it affects. There's a difference, and I think the Governors Forum tried to make that difference obvious by telling us that the national minimum wage is not an across-the-board review of wages. When it's an across-the-board review of wages, you can see considerate, percentage increase, for all levels of salary earners. But what we have now is minimum, which means to say that salary of workers in Nigeria should not be less than this. So it used to be 18,500. Now it has been increased to 30,000 naira. It means that anywhere in Nigeria, for any employer of labor that employs more than 25 people in its establishment, the minimum salary to be earned in that establishment should not be less than 30,000. That is the impact or the reflection of that law, as it were. Now, the consequential consideration is that now you have a grade of people that their salary should not be less than 30,000. It is now expected that, of course, at the highest threshold of that 30,000, you can, for instance, a level 6 officer with the reflective percentage increase on his or her salary is likely at step 8 to be higher than step 7's salary. So there's no equity. So the consequential consideration is to allow for equity, and equity in a way that will reflect, justice. So what they have now done at the level of the national negotiating team is to apply the principles of relativity. So, we are not going to do a 66% increase as reflected in the national income. The national minimum wage is actually a 66.7% increase on the old 18,500. That is how 30,000 naira was agreed.
Yes. Now we have the Governors Forum, saying that individual states, we have to, agree on the consequential increase according to their levels.
I can tell you that even now, at the level of the old national minimum wage, the reflection is discriminatory. Even now, what a salary earner earns in Lagos, for instance, is different to what a salary earner earns in Yobe. But it is within the threshold, but there are differences in outlook. And that is what is going to reflect in this consequential thing. The Labour is insisting this is going to be the minimum template we are going to take when we go into negotiation. The governors are saying it has to be a reflection of the resources and the economy of the state. But there's an agreement between Labour and governors that it's going to be a reflection of capacity of the state, to pay.
As an investment analyst and economist, as it were, don't you think that there should be a review of the federal allocation formula as being postulated by some state governors now, that if the states have to bear the burden of this new minimum wage, now their capacity must be increased through the federal allocation, and some are even postulating true federalism as the way out of this kind of logjam?
You see, the making any submission on the federal allocation formula is to be wholesale, is to be wholesome, is to look at so many factors. It's not just allocation. One, it must come from the Constitution. The Constitution has itemized the responsibilities and, of course, the expenditure and income areas for each tier of government. So much that you have the exclusive list, you have the concurrent list, and of course the residual. So to that extent, there must be a shuffling before you start talking of allocation, of reviewing the federal allocation. There are certain areas that the federal government is responsible to, and you cannot take it away until you review the Constitution. So we cannot start talking about doing that until that is done. That is what must come first, But what is essential is that we still have opportunities to ramp up our revenue generation capacity, either at the level of the federal government or at state level or even at local government level. What is obvious is that most state governments in Nigeria have not been able to tap into the potentials available within their jurisdiction, in terms of internally generated revenue. This is the first litmus test of independence. When the revenue generated within a state government jurisdiction cannot pay the salary of its own workers, and it had to depend on what comes from the federal, it means that jurisdiction, that state government, cannot survive by itself. It means that it is not economically independent, as an entity of state. What Lagos State takes from the federal is less than 25% of its expenditure, annually. It means that 75% of what it spends is generated internally. That's what we are looking at for other states, and there are potentials in each of the federating states, as it were, and that is what we think governors should start looking into.
So thank you for your time, sir. You really spoken well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir.
The problems of some of the places like Warri, Benin, Sapele Road, the southeast that you talk about, first of all, you must understand that those places don't just stand in isolation. The Niger Delta is the lungs of Nigeria. That's the rainforest. It's a high water table area. These problems are not as pronounced as they are now, in January and February. The reason is that that's the dry season of the year. This is the rainy season, it's weather conditions. And I know no country, there's no country in the world that doesn't face transport challenges in extreme weather. In some places, it is winter and snow. They cancel flights. It's transportation. They cancel rail programs. Some places, it is typhoon, hurricane. In some places, you can't even come out. So this is the season we are just getting to the end of rainy season. Flood. It will affect roads. We've seen cities submerged. We've seen infrastructure blown down in other parts of the world. It's one world. It's the same rain. It's the same planet. This is our own time to experience it. It's moving out of Nigeria now and going somewhere else. So what we experience at this year is unusual. It's not a good time to be in the transport system. we also want this season to quickly end so that we can go back to work during the dry weather.
Thanks for watching, and that is our package this week on Abuja Dispatch. For further comments and suggestions, you can reach us out on our various social media platforms. Thank you for allowing us to share your moments on Abuja Dispatch. We bring you another refreshing package next week. Adegboyega Arogbodo is my name. Have a good night.